Welcome to our channel Crime Loom, the place where true crime stories come alive. It was a normal morning in Los Angeles. People were driving to work. Shops were opening. No one knew that within minutes, the street would turn into a war zone. Two men stepped out of a car wearing body armor, carrying weapons meant for battle, not robbery. What happened next shocked the world. Police were outgunned. Bullets tore through cars. Helicopters filmed everything live. This was not a movie. This was real. And for 44 terrifying minutes, an entire city held its breath as one of the most violent shootouts in American history unfolded in front of the world. On a quiet morning in Los Angeles, the streets of North Hollywood looked like any other day. People were driving to work. Shops were opening. Nothing felt unusual. No one knew that, within minutes, this calm neighborhood turned into a battlefield that the world would never forget. Two men were already preparing for something violent. Their names were Larry Phillips Jr. and Emil Matserianu. To people who passed them on the street, they looked strange, but not dangerous enough to cause alarm. But underneath their long coats, they were carrying weapons that were meant for war, not robbery. They had planned this day carefully. They believed they were smarter, stronger, better armed than anyone who might stop them. The men arrived outside a Bank of America branch. They parked their car and stepped out, wearing homemade body armor that covered most of their bodies. The armor was heavy, but they were used to it. They had practiced moving and shooting while wearing it. They carried automatic rifles with large magazines, some holding dozens of bullets. They believed no police officer could stop them. Inside the bank, people were standing in line, waiting for their turn. The doors suddenly opened, and the two men walked in. Within seconds, fear filled the room. The robbers shouted orders and fired shots into the air. Customers and employees were forced to the ground. Glass shattered. Screams echoed. The robbers demanded money, but something went wrong almost immediately. A silent alarm had already been triggered. Police officers nearby received the call and rushed to the scene. The robbers sensed the police were coming faster than expected. They did not get as much money as they wanted. Instead of escaping quietly, they decided to fight their way out. When the robbers stepped back outside, they opened fire on the police without warning. The sound of gunfire exploded through the streets. Officers took cover behind cars and walls, shocked by what they were facing. The bullets from the robbers' rifles tore through police vehicles like paper. Windows shattered. Engines were hit. Sirens wailed in the background. The police officers were not prepared for this kind of firepower. Most of them were carrying pistols and shotguns. Their weapons were not strong enough to break through the robbers' armor. Officers fired back, but the bullets bounced off or failed to stop the attackers. It quickly became clear that this was not a normal robbery. This was a war in the middle of the city. Civilians ran for their lives. Some hid inside buildings. Others crouched behind cars, praying the bullets would not reach them. The streets became empty, except for police, gunmen, and shattered debris. Helicopters hovered above, capturing everything live on television. People across the country watched in disbelief as the shootout unfolded in real time. The robbers moved slowly but confidently, firing nonstop. They reloaded again and again. Hundreds of bullets filled the air. Officers were wounded, some shot in the legs, arms, and torso. Despite the fear and chaos, many officers showed incredible courage. They dragged injured colleagues to safety while bullets flew around them, realizing they were outmatched. Some officers ran to a nearby gun store. They borrowed high-powered rifles because they had no other choice. This moment would later change police departments forever. Officers returned to the scene with stronger weapons, hoping they could finally stop the attackers. The shootout continued for nearly an hour. One robber, Larry Phillips Jr., was shot several times. Blood loss weakened him. As police closed in, he collapsed. Knowing he could not escape, he took his own life. His body lay on the street, surrounded by shell casings. The second robber, Emil Matserianu, was still fighting. He was hit in the legs, the only part of his body not fully protected by armor. He tried to keep moving, but the blood loss was too severe. Eventually, he collapsed near a police car. Officers approached cautiously, unsure if he was still a threat. By the time they reached him, he had bled to death. When the gunfire finally stopped, the silence felt unreal. Smoke hung in the air. The streets were destroyed. Police cars were riddled with bullet holes. Over 1,000 rounds had been fired during the shootout. Miraculously, no civilians were killed. But many police officers and bystanders were injured. The investigation that followed revealed disturbing details. The robbers had spent years preparing. They practiced shooting modified weapons illegally and built their own armor. They were obsessed with violence and believed they could overpower anyone. Their plan was not just to rob a bank. It was to prove something to the world. The North Hollywood Shootout changed policing in the United States forever. Police departments realized they needed better equipment and training. Patrol rifles became standard. Body armor improved. New tactics were developed for active shooter situations. Officers were trained to respond faster and with more coordination. The event also changed how the public viewed crime. People realized that danger could appear anywhere, even in a quiet neighborhood on a normal day. The live footage burned into the minds of millions. It showed fear, bravery, and chaos all at once. Years later, the streets of North Hollywood returned to normal. New buildings replaced damaged ones. Cars passed by without stopping. But the memory of that day never faded. Officers who were there still remember the sound of gunfire. Civilians remember hiding and waiting, unsure if they would survive. The North Hollywood Shootout is remembered not as a successful robbery, but as a warning. It showed what happens when violence meets unprepared systems. It showed how quickly normal life can collapse into terror. And it showed how courage can still exist in the worst moments. Even today, police training videos study this event. Law enforcement recruits learn about the mistakes, the bravery, and the lessons. The shootout became a turning point in modern policing. For the people who lived through it, it was not history. It was real fear, real pain, and real survival. One ordinary morning turned into a moment that reshaped law enforcement forever. The North Hollywood Shootout remains one of the most intense and shocking crime events ever recorded. Not because of the money stolen, but because of the sheer scale of violence and the lasting impact it left behind. And it all began on a quiet street. On a day that was supposed to be just like any other. When the gunfire finally ended, the street fell silent, but the impact of that day never faded. The North Hollywood Shootout was more than a failed robbery. It was a moment that changed policing forever. It exposed weaknesses, forced new training, and saved lives in the years that followed. For those who were there, it was a reminder of how fast ordinary life can turn into chaos. And for the world watching, it proved one simple truth. History is not always written in books. Sometimes it unfolds live in the middle of an ordinary street. For watching more amazing videos like this, subscribe our channel Crime Loom.